Hey guys.
Hi everybody.
Happy Friday. Joe and I are matching. We decided to go gray today.
Yes, indeed.
Hope everybody is doing well. Nice to see you. Wild, thank you for the 12-month subscription. It's really awesome. Says, I can't stay. I have Bethesda devs to talk to. Yay, QuakeCon. But I had to drop this whilst I had the chance. Stay awesome. I love whilst.
Yes.
Everyone in the UK and Australia uses it. I think it makes everyone sound really smart.
Yeah.
So how's it going, Mr. McStabby, Min, Xanatax, Pods of War, Oliver is here. Like literally I can see him sitting over there. I saw Lobo Styles in here earlier, Goofer Games, nice to see you. If you said hi a bit earlier, sorry, you're not on the screen. Let me see, Infamous One, Sparrow McGee, Britain Gaming, nice to see you guys. Today we are going to be talking about contracts. We're going to show you some real-world examples of contracts. Don't worry, we've hidden or changed the names to protect the innocent and the guilty. No comment, Lobo. Guys, yeah, Lobo, if you don't know him, he's an influencer relations expert at a PR agency called Reverb that we do a fair amount of work with. He's an awesome dude. You should check him out.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. And Yeah, so I mean, we want to talk, and give you guys some actual examples, right? Because I think the hardest thing, the number one thing that I hear from streamers, from content creators when we're just talking is, geez, I get this contract and it's full of like lawyer talk and I don't know what it means. So the first things that we should say are neither of us are lawyers.
Yes.
And none of this constitutes legal advice.
Yes.
And that's something that even a lawyer will tell you when they're talking to you, like outside of, you paying them. It's their way of saying, I don't work for free. But, it is important to understand that this is guidance. This is our opinion on, it is a fairly expert opinion, as we've reviewed thousands of contracts, so we've seen a lot of these things. But there are times that we bring our lawyers in too. What we're going to show you today and we're going to talk about today is that a lot of times contracts have pretty standard language in them. And when you see standard language and you understand it, it's very comforting. I feel good because I know, number one, that they had a lawyer write the thing and not some kid. And number two, that standard language that's kind of been agreed on among companies, there are various versions, right? But there are fair versions, there are, versions that kind of screw people over.
Yeah.
There are some that are really advantageous to the company, some that are really advantageous to the streamer, and some that are good for everybody. So you start to see the same language, which is another reason to always keep every contract that you get, because you can use them as reference documents. A lot of times when I see language that I don't, that I've never seen before, I'll go back through our, giant, database of contracts, and I'll find something similar. And I'll compare it. And at the point that you feel like you don't understand something in a contract, you do really need to start talking to other people. And we have a very good legal team. So at the point that we don't understand something, or we understand that something is more complicated than we feel comfortable doing, then we always pass that up to our great lawyers, and they wreck that shit up. Because that's what they do.
You'd always have somebody that you can escalate those things to, just in case, just to be sure.
Yeah, and lawyers can be expensive, and as a smaller streamer, I know, the cost of that can sometimes be, daunting. There are a couple different ways to look at that. Number one, the cost of signing a bad contract is almost always more than the cost of having a lawyer look at something. Building a relationship with a lawyer is a really good thing to do in your life in general. You may have a cousin or an uncle or a friend or someone like that who's a lawyer, or someone who's going to law school. For a lot of the stuff that you're going to get in, it's not going to be like Law and Order on TV or something. You're not going to need some like high-powered lawyer to sit down and be like crossing stuff off and be like, well, we're going to have to renegotiate all these things. Most of the things that you'll get either are fine, mostly fine, or so bad that, it's just full of red flags. And
right off the bat.
And you just run, right? So, I mean, we want to talk a little bit about, building the relationships, because that's an important part of this. A contract negotiation is not a fight, if you're doing it right. Like, you have to work with the people that you're signing the contract with afterwards. So you really don't want to, have the contract negotiation feel like you're going to burn the house to the ground. Because then, everybody involved, and it goes both ways, right? You should never feel disrespected or treated badly in a contract negotiation. Because if you do, it's a pretty good sign that things are, it's a good indication of how things may continue to go.
Exactly. Once
the contract is signed. Because with no contract in place, you don't owe them anything. But the second that you've signed the contract, there's an agreement. So if they're already treating you badly without an agreement in place, imagine how they're going to treat you when they feel like you owe them stuff. So always keep that in mind. Like, I was tweeting maybe last week, a few days ago, I can't remember. It's a lot easier to say no than it is to renegotiate or negotiate your way out of a bad contract. So a lot of times, if we get something in and it's really bad, we just say, look, I'm not going to spend 5 hours redlining this and then once we've done that, negotiating for several more hours. And the term redlining, I don't know if you guys know that one. It is a legal term. So if you had a contract, which this is not one, it's a piece of paper though, so it's like a contract.
Yes.
You know, the way that lawyers work is they take the contract and then they usually use a red pen, which is called redlining, and they cross out things they don't like, and then in the margins they write in things that they want. So, you know, if you want to change the language away from, you know, something that sucks, you cross it out with your red pen and then you write your version in.
Yep.
You send the red lines back over to the lawyers, and you know, they do that, they make the changes on their side, and then they send you a new one. You kind of keep doing this until everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Thankfully now it's mostly done digitally, but even Microsoft Word still makes everything red.
Yes, yeah.
So do you want to talk, Joe, a little bit about sort of business relationships and like how we get to the point, what do we do before we get contracts?
So a lot of the work leading up to contracts is directly going to be reflected onto the contracts. All of the discussion from the point of initial contact, and whether that's outreach on your side or outreach from that business wanting to work with you as a content creator, all of the discussion that you'll have with them, the back and forth, all of that will be reflected onto the contract. The contract is essentially a summary, a legal summary of everything that you've discussed beforehand to make sure that all expectations are clear going forwards.
Yep.
So that initial contact will happen on either side saying, hey, I'd like to work on this project. We want to run this project on X, Y, or Z. Can you help us out with that? You'll go through the motions of determining exactly what you want from the relationship and what they want from the relationship. And once you guys figure that out, say, okay, cool, let's get a contract in place.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
And this is a really important point. Contract should never feel like a surprise. And in general, you should, when you get a contract, you should never be surprised by anything in it. Mm-hmm. There are a whole bunch of red flags in this. I think a good analogy is dating, right? Like, so, you know, you go on a first date with somebody, there's sort of some protocols, right? Mm-hmm. Like you take them out to dinner, right? Like it's all sort of expected, or a movie or whatever it is, like one of these random things. I don't know what you kids do these days. But if you were to say like, hey, why don't we have our first date in my bed? Right there, the other person might be like, well, that seems weird. That's a weird place to have a date begin. So, you know, right there, you've seen a red flag, right?
Yep.
Like this person is maybe moving too fast towards something that you may or may not want at this point. And the same thing is true in contracts, right? Like the initial part of this is a conversation or an email. Like if somebody were to just send you a contract, you've never heard from them before, they just send you a contract and say, hey, we want you to do this. Like, just read this and sign it. Yeah. You know, that's kind of like getting asked on the date and having the date be in somebody's bed. Yeah. It's like, well, we haven't even talked yet. I gotta work. Like, let's dial it back a little. Like, you know, buy a streamer a drink first. Yeah. And that doesn't happen very often, luckily.
It doesn't, fortunately. In that kind of bed analogy, just like in dating, you probably want to run the other direction if that's what they suggest. If somebody comes right out the gates asking for the equivalent, you know, it's a pretty good sign that you might, again, want to run the other direction.
Yeah, because in dating, right, like that protocol all exists for a reason, and part of it is that each of the pieces of a date are designed for a specific purpose, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we're gonna get to know each other, we're gonna talk, we're gonna see, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But understanding how dating works also demonstrates that, you know, like you're a professional. Like you understand that there's rules and you know how to, you know, navigate them and that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly, Conan. So the same is true with contracts and business relationships. You know, you want to see somebody send you an email that's just kind of an inquiry. Hey, I watched your channel. I think it's really cool. I love what you do. I love how you play this game. We have an opportunity with this game. I think you would like it. Do you want to like have a chat about it? Because, you know, we'd love to work with you. Yeah. You know, we get dozens of those emails every day. You know, probably maybe even more than that. Hey, Steve's TV, how you doing, man? And so, you know, naturally, what's the next thing that you do? You get that email.
Yes. So at that point, you follow up and you talk with them. You see kind of what their idea of what they want to do is. And sometimes they'll know exactly what they want to do. Sometimes they won't know what they want to do. They'll rely on your own expertise as a broadcaster to know what content works best for your channel, and they want to do whatever you believe is going to be, like, your audience is going to be the most receptive to.
Yeah, this is the point where you're negotiating.
Yep.
You shouldn't be negotiating once you have a contract.
Mm-hmm.
A contract is really just the written down version of what you've agreed to, so that we have it in, we basically built the rule book for, this game that we're gonna play.
Yep.
And guys, if you have questions about this, please ask them in chat. You can ask them on Twitter as well at #AskOPG. Yes, every damn time. Never ever gonna get it right. It's over there.
There we go.
Maybe I'll just restrain my arm next time. But yeah, so you go through this process. You talk to people, and and in this process, they're not going to offer you everything that you might be able to get. Just like any negotiation, you're going to buy a car, right? Like, you don't start by saying, well, I'll give you $1 million for that car, right? You start with a low number, and the guy's going to try to, you go back and forth and figure it out.
Yeah.
The same is true here. If they start off by offering you something, it's almost always going to be way less than you want. Or they may not even mention compensation, or they may say there's no compensation, but there could be.
Yeah.
So, you have to view, once this negotiation starts, you have to start thinking about it as, as a negotiation. Like, it's no longer you're just chatting. Like, they're trying to get the lowest possible price. Nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
And you're trying to get, well, hopefully a fair price, but also in some cases, some people try to get the highest possible price.
Yep.
But you'll have the best time if you have these discussions, you negotiate, you figure out what they want, how to deliver it, and, to the best of your ability. You're very honest about what you can or can't do, because a lot of times where we see the failure points in opportunities is that they ask for an unreasonable amount of results. Like a video game might say, you'll only get paid $5,000 if people download this game 5,000 times.
Yeah.
And we kind of know it's like that's not gonna happen. And also in that example, you should be paid, companies pay a lot more per install of a game because they make a lot more than $1, per thing. So, understanding that that's probably not the best deal, but also that you probably can't do it. Could you stream a game for an hour and get 5,000 people to download it if you have 100 people watching you? Seems unlikely. So you need to negotiate that stuff there, because once it's in a contract you've signed, you're committed to doing that. And, in that case, not getting paid. Yeah. Companies will try all kinds of things. We've talked about a few of them in the past. They'll tell you about all the exposure you'll get by working with the brand and how it's going to be valuable for you to be associated with, this big company or that sort of thing. Again, that's a tactic.
Yeah.
There is some value in being associated with a good brand. It's very limited in its scope. You always have to remember that the company is asking you to help them promote their product. So they're not really in a position to also promote you. Like, if they were good at promoting things, they didn't need you.
Yeah.
So because of that, always be a little skeptical when someone says it's going to be good exposure. It doesn't mean, there are examples of good exposure, but almost always you should be looking for money as well. The exposure should come as part of an arrangement.
Yes.
You look at it, you look at the terms, right? So first thing you're asking is, what do they want? A lot of times these emails come in, they're kind of vague. They want you to play the game or tweet about it or something like that. So the first thing you want to do is say something like, hey, I really want to do a good job. I'm excited about this because XYZ. It's like, oh, I love this game. I've been looking forward to it. Yeah. It sounds like you want me to stream the game for a couple hours, maybe tweet about it. Are there other things that you want? How else can I help? And just see what they say. And then anything they say that's good that you like doing, You're like, yeah. Oh, you want me to tweet like 3 or 4 times? Yeah, sure. Oh, you want me to give away a bunch of keys? Yeah, sure. You know, kind of be taking notes as you're having this conversation about the things you agreed on, because there are things you agreed on. And if you get a contract and it's way different than the things you agreed on, that's another red flag. But you may not remember if you don't write it down.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one thing that I have found incredibly helpful in my own experience here is if you're handling all of the conversation via email, you know, it's already very clear. Everything's in writing. If you're talking with somebody on the phone, take crazy notes throughout the whole thing. And then once you're finished with the call, first thing you do is you sit down, you make your TLDR of the notes of the call, and you write that in a summary email back to whoever you were talking with. We say, hey guys, this is what we were talking about, X, Y, and Z. Here's what I expect from you. Here's what you expect from me. Is this good? And then everybody's on the same page. There's no room for error of saying, oh yeah, hey, you said you would do this when you get into contracts phase.
Totally. And you know, it's funny too, because that is absolutely something you should do, because you know, maybe you misremembered something, maybe you wrote something down wrong, whatever it is. The second that you send your notes to them, like you have said, this is the agreement. You know, they now have an opportunity to look at it and go, whoa, whoa, whoa! I didn't say I was going to give you $1,000 for that. Like, I said 500, or, you know, and then now you have to have a discussion about that. And hey, maybe it's another red flag if it feels like they're just trying to change it. You know, sometimes it's an honest mistake. Like, you know, if I don't take notes, like if I'm having a lunch meeting or something, I'll forget 1 or 2 of the things almost every time. And then they say, oh yeah, you said that. I was like, yeah, it does sound right. That's fine. But you know, that's not. When you're, you know, in a serious negotiation, you're really trying to get what you want, you always want to have those notes for that reason.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, when you get, because sometimes this process will take weeks, right? Like, Joe, I know you've been doing one that's been, it feels like months recently. And so, you know, over that long a period of time, we're all doing other stuff. Easy to forget about this. A week may go by, whatever. You know, maybe so far back that you don't remember anything that was in it. And if you don't have those notes, then how do you reconstruct it?
Precisely.
And and then sort of the next thing that happens, you know, like, again, ask for the things you want. That's really important. They're not going to give you everything that you want up front. It's very rare. I mean, we do occasionally. It's usually with companies we've worked with a bunch, so they kind of are just trying to skip some of the negotiations. But it's very rare that a company will send you an email that says, this is what we want, this is what we want to give you, are you good? And then you just look at it and go, yeah, we're good. Like, it's there's almost always a fair amount of back and forth in it. So don't be afraid to ask. You know, hey, Blesius, how you doing, man? Hey, Fox Knight, nice to see you guys.
Xanatax has a really good question. They say, side question, does written chat / DM conversation count as in writing? Make sure that it is somewhere that you can access it later if you need to. Like if it's something that's super important and you're worried, what if my DMs get wiped? What if Skype updates and I lose past conversation? Screenshots. Make sure that you have all of that, because yes, it does count as in writing. It's not the same as a contract, but if it's written down somewhere. Make sure you have access to it.
Make sure you have access to it, I think, is the most important thing. We constantly will go back to a Skype conversation or Discord or whatever, you know, because those keep good records.
Every day.
The reference to that, you know, that's the same thing as taking notes or that kind of thing. It's written in there.
Exactly.
You know, like Joe said, that's not a contract. So there's nothing about a conversation with a person that guarantees
it's not binding.
That they're going to do that in the contract. The contract is the one that becomes binding, and then what that says, that's what has to happen. Everything up until that is theory. You know, you're working on your reputation, right? Like, obviously, it's not a good thing to agree to a bunch of things, you know, in your first call, and then come back and say, well, my prices have doubled, my friend. Like, let's talk now, you know, because that feels just as bad as it feels when the company comes back and tells you, it's like, well, there's no money anymore, so sorry. So you always want to make sure that, you know, you're not committing to anything, even in the calls. that you wouldn't be comfortable with.
Exactly.
But also make sure that on that call, or chat or whatever you're doing, you ask the questions that you want. And the number one question we hear people need to ask is, does this pay? Or what does this pay? How do I get my money? How do I get my fair share, right? You're asking me for something. I would like something in return. That's why we're all here. And a company like these guys, they just won't bring it up, right? Like, there's no reason to bring up paying you if you don't ask, and then if later you're like, gee, I was really disappointed that I didn't get paid for that. It's like, well, I didn't know.
Yeah. They thought you were cool doing it for free.
Yeah. And, there are some companies out there that will take advantage of people that this way, and just get a bunch of people to do stuff for free. There's some, you'll ask for money and they'll just kind of either ghost on you, or they'll say that there's no money because they only want to work with people that are going to do it for free. Yeah. However, it's good to find that out as soon as possible. So, you don't want to invest 10 hours of your life into this process and then find out you're doing it for free. Exactly. And that was a huge waste of your time. So as early in the process as possible, without being rude. I mean, you don't want to be like, hey, shut up for a minute. How much does this get paid? Or I'll get on the phone if you tell me how much it is. You do have to play the game a little bit, right? But as soon as it makes sense, and sometimes it'll make sense immediately. You'll want to write back like, hey, thanks, I'm excited. I would like to know, is this a compensated opportunity? That sort of thing. And, an important thing is when you're asking questions like that to ask very directly. Ask for what you want. Don't try to give them a vague question that would let them just say no. It's like you say, how much will I be compensated for this? Is a much stronger question than, is compensation available for these opportunities? Because if you say the second one, I can just go, no. Sorry, there's none. If you say the first one, it's like, how much am I being compensated for this? Then it's a much more awkward thing to be like, well so
there's $0.
Yeah, you see,
I got $7 in my pocket.
Yeah, I got 7. But yeah, just being direct, understanding, and before you start having that conversation, think about what you want for it. It may change as they ask, they may ask you for more stuff. But at least have a good sense of what you would charge. It's okay, it's an hour of streaming and a tweet. What would I charge for that? You should everybody should at least have that number kind of in their head at all times when you're talking business. The ballpark of that, it's super important, because it's the most frustrating thing in the world when you're the other side of the equation and you're like, yeah, totally, I'll pay you. What do you want? And the person's like, I don't know. What do you think? And it's like, man, I'm not an expert on this. I thought, I'm trying to pay you. How much do you want? So, having those numbers, don't stress yourself out about them being absolutely precise.
Exact. You may charge a little bit less for a game that you already play, or something that you are super, super excited for. You would have played anyway. Or if it's something that's a little bit more out of your wheelhouse, then, maybe charge a little bit more.
Yeah. And, we've done a few episodes on rates in the past, and as Oliver just said, we'll be doing another one of those before too long, because it was really, really great. Oh, perfect question, bless you.
Precisely.
How do you gauge how much you're worth? Well, so the very quick version of it is we look at your concurrency. How many people are watching you when you're going to play the game, and then how long are you going to play the game? So you take those two numbers and then you multiply them by a rate. And the rate we use is usually between 1.1 and 2 cents per viewer per minute. So we call it cost per viewer minute. And the idea being, if you have 100 people watching you for an hour, so that's 100 times 60, and then you multiply that between 1.1 and 2 cents, and that gets you the hourly rate. And that's just for your stream. That doesn't count doing a YouTube video. That doesn't count tweets. Those all have
posts.
different things. So bless you. Just send me a message. I'll send you that stuff later or over the weekend. Give you a sense of what we would charge on your channel.
Fox Knight says, what about half my coffee? would depend on what half.
Yeah, I always like the bottom half because that's where all the sugar and cream end up. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, it's really important that if you at any point really feel like you're not getting what you want out of the conversation, it doesn't sound like they respect you, or you really want to get money, but they're not super excited about that.
Yeah.
Or they want you to do things you're uncomfortable with, like we want you to just stop your stream and do like a 10-minute ad about our product, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to just say no. Just say sorry, like, thank you for taking the time. This is, sounds like a great opportunity, but I'm not interested in it right now.
Yeah.
And leave the door open for the future, because chances are, if it's hitting your ear wrong, it's hitting a lot of people's ear wrong. And a lot of times, those companies are reaching out to a lot of people, and they're failing to get anybody. And when they're failing to get anybody, they have to go back to their boss, because their boss is like, all right, did you get me Co? Did you get me Gassy Mexican, Sacriel? Like, who you got? Hit me up. And they're like, we have one guy. He has 9 viewers. He said he might do it. And it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, am I having a stroke? Like, did you just say that? Like, I thought you were going to get me all the great streamers in the world with your brilliant plan. So that person is under a lot of pressure to do this right.
Yep.
And so when they're not doing it right, it's important that they don't succeed because they'll learn, right?
Exactly.
They'll go back and have that conversation with their boss, and their boss will say, okay, well, obviously we're doing something wrong. What do you think we need to do? And then he'll be like, well, gee, boss, they all seem to want to get paid. And it's like, okay, really? Like, they want to get paid? These assholes. Like, all right, well, pay them, and then they'll go back, and, again, it may not be great, but it's made a little bit of progress.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, I don't know, with
many
dozens of companies, hundreds of companies, and sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. Sometimes it happens over the course of months, and sometimes it happens with like that guy that you talked to getting fired and a new guy coming in who actually knows how this works.
Yeah.
But every time that you take a deal that's bad, you teach sort of bad people to keep making bad deals with you and with other people.
Yeah.
So always be careful about that. Always, be willing to say no. Be willing to walk away. Like that used car dealership sort of training that, you think about. It's like, I'm going to go in the dealership, I'm going to get hit with all this pressure, that kind of thing. Like, you need to think the same way that you would if you were trying to buy a car. Like, if you're feeling bad about it, just leave. Like, there's plenty more cars, There's going to be plenty more deals. And I know it may not feel like that when you're small, like you're not getting tons and tons of opportunities, but I guarantee you will get another one. If you got one, you will get another one.
Yeah.
And as you grow, you'll get more and more. If you tie yourself down to a bunch of bad contracts or do a bunch of bad deals, those can hang around your neck.
Heck, yep, that's right.
Be a weight on your shoulders. There's all kinds of analogies for it's bad.
Yeah.
But they can hold you back for a long time. Sometimes to the point that they do serious damage to your channel.
Don't set the bad precedent for yourself. In setting a bad precedent for yourself, you're not always only just affecting yourself. You can be affecting other broadcasters, current, in the present, and the future, as well. With if you're taking bad deals.
Yeah. Well, like Mr. McStabby says, there's the problem of it would be awesome, but you think they may not be able to afford you.
Yeah.
So, I think for probably everybody that's in the channel right now, they can afford you. Like, if they are able to afford a website and a product, to build a video game, to have employees, we're not talking about so much money that you're going to be breaking the bank. Again, think about you have to answer the question for yourself. But what would 1 hour of your time streaming and one tweet, what would you charge for that? Now, I would guess that the people that are in this room will say numbers in general between like $50 and maybe $1,000. And Blessius may want to charge a little bit more than that. We'll have to look.
Yep.
But look, $1,000 for any company that is doing okay is not that much money. You know, I worked at Sony, and obviously Sony's a huge company. $1,000 is like not even it's less than a rounding error. You know, like you can there. It's funny because we're going through this with a huge company right now, where, you know, there's like a fairly large amount of money going through their approvals process, and it reminded me that at big companies there are different amounts that different people can approve. Like when I was at Sony, I could approve anything up to like $10,000. Just didn't have to ask anybody. It's like, oh, you want to spend $10,000 on bumper cars? Cool, it's mine. Let's go. You know, and then if you wanted to go up to like $25,000, you had to ask my boss. And then $50,000 was his boss. And then anything, you know, above that, we had to go to like the CFO and, you know, the president of the company, things like that. So when you think about it that way, you can tell what the company considers like a real amount of money. It's like, I was a like fairly senior person at Sony, you know, and they're just like, $10,000, doesn't matter, who cares, you know? So any company that is producing a real product that they're trying to get you to promote, they should be able to pay a little bit of money for this kind of stuff. Yeah. You know, a few $100 is not going to break the bank. And honestly, if they're having trouble, you know, or they're telling you like, gosh, we can't afford a couple $100, but we'll pay you this affiliate deal or whatever, what guarantee do you have that they can afford to pay you the affiliate deal? Like, they may be out of business by the time your first check is supposed to show up. So, you know, also things to think about with the companies. And yeah, if you're worried that a company can't afford you, first, don't worry about it. But second, it's fine. Like, if you're so good, this happens all the time with us, actually. Yeah. You know, like Coke Carnage is fairly expensive, and you know, you imagine Ninja, who we don't manage, is more expensive. Yeah. You know, a company will say like, "Gosh, it would be cool if Co would do this thing." It's like, all right, well, this is typically what it costs for Co to do what you want. They're like, oh, that's yeah, we can't afford that. Yeah. You know, we only have this much money. And see, and this is what'll happen, right? So, if completely random numbers, all right, let's just say that I'll just pick on Blessius since he's here. So for Blessius, that number would be $50,000 an hour. It's a little high, but you know, good work for commanding that amount of revenue. So, you know, a company says, well, what would it cost, you know, for me to get Blessius to stream my game for an hour? And it's like, well, it's typically $50,000. That's what he's gotten every time recently. And they're like, oh, geez, like I don't have $50,000. You know, then they say, the most I can spend is $25,000. Yep. They'll almost always say that. And if they don't, you can ask them. You know, it's like, if they're like, gee, that's too much money, it's like, okay, well, what, you know, it's like, what is your budget? Like, what are you looking to do? Yeah. You know, and then if the company comes back and says, well, we only have $25,000, we would probably say, okay, well, you're an indie game company. Let me go talk to Blessius and see if he wants to give you like an indie game discount. You know, just like, because he's a good guy. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, right? But now it's your call. Exactly. And you also have like the initiative and the, you know, the drive in the conversation now. Yep. So that's good. But yeah, I mean, the main things are, don't sweat it. Like, we used to spend a lot of time trying to think about like, okay, well, how much money do these people have? Like, how could we get the right amount of money? But it's just not the right way to think about it. Yeah. You know, you wouldn't go into a grocery store and be like, I need a stick of butter. And the guy's like, well, you look rich. That butter's going to cost $1,000. You know, it's like, fuck. Well, I do have $1,000, so I could pay for it, right?
That gold leaf butter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it better be some damn good butter, right? But, you know, but if you're approaching it that way, then you're kind of being a scumbag. Yeah. You know? And the reality is that these things, like an hour of streaming on your channel, has a fair value. Yeah. What it is a little hard to determine, right? You know, like you notice the price of gas goes up and down every single day. You know, they don't do that because they're dicks. They do that because the price changes all the time and it's annoying. Yeah. You know, if they could just charge one price for a year, I guarantee they would, but they can't. And it's the same here.
Nobody would have to go climb up on those signs, changing the freaking numbers all the time.
Yeah. And hey, Kelly Kapowski, how you doing? Merlin, nice to see you. Blue Moxie, what?
That's a fun sentence.
Yeah.
How you doing?
But yeah, like the prices change for this stuff, and they're not defined, but we do have a good sense of what is fair, and obviously $50,000 for Blessius is a little high, but because you're not trying to get the maximum amount of money out of people every time. You're just trying to get the fair amount of money.
Yeah.
And when you establish what's fair, and feel free to use our equation, right, to figure out what's fair, and then say, well, I used OP Group's formula for calculating my rate, and this is what it says that I should get paid. Right there, that's a lot of credibility. And if they called us and said, "Hey, this asshole Blessius says he's using your formula, and he says this is the number," like we'll tell him. So if you did it right, like we'll say, "Yeah, that's how we would do it. That if we managed him, that's what we would do."
Yep.
Right there, you have some grounding for it. Like the one we always use is, well, so if it's $50,000, it's because like this company, this company, this company, or like the last 5 people that we've talked to have all paid that.
Yeah.
So, why you got to be cheap? Like
It's a lot harder to say no to.
Yeah.
Without sounding real cheap.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe you can't afford it, or maybe you don't think it's fair, but all these other companies did.
Yeah.
So it's, it gives you that baseline. It gets easier once you've done a few of these deals, and then you can say, well, last time I got paid $250 for an hour, so I'd like to get paid $250. Like, that seems fair. It's the same amount of work.
Yeah.
I have the same or bigger viewership. And as long as you can kind of tie it to something, that's really what makes a difference. And if it doesn't work out, because they can't afford you, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's, you're doing so well, your channel is so valuable that this company can't afford to work with you. That's something that you can say to people, when you're negotiating with them.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, I've had offers, but, they haven't actually been able to meet my values. So, and it puts you in a good position. Super friendly viewer, what's your question? And guys, you can always ask questions with hashtag AskOPG or just in chat. We'll try to do it. What is not a great question, though, Fox Knight. Unless you're Lil Jon, and then it's the best question. So I mean, I think that's some basics on how you get up to a contract, right? You've had the conversations, you've sort of worked it out, you understand like what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to get. Then they send you this document, and they'll send it to you in one of 3 ways. And the different ways they send it actually will tell you a little bit about what they're thinking. So the 3 ways are, they'll send it to you as a document, like a Microsoft Word doc. They'll send it to you as a PDF, or they will send it to you as
Electronic signature.
Electronic signature. And if someone could go ahead and ban Super Friendly Viewer, that would be good. Yeah, and yeah, no racist stuff in here, guys. But so it'll either be a PDF, it'll be a Word document, or it'll be DocuSign or HelloSign, like an online contract signing format thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's probably a technical term for it.
I'm pretty sure that is the technical term for it.
So there are 3, these actually represent 3 different stages of contracts. Like if you were a lawyer and you review contracts all day, every day, you would expect to get the contract as a Word document every time. Sending it as a Word document is the most respectful way that someone can send you a contract, because it says, I'm open to you changing this. I'm open to you putting red lines in.
Yes.
Microsoft Word has that built in. It's just easy to do. Sending it as a PDF means that you don't want the other person to change anything in the document. So it's a little bit less friendly, but I would say this is the most common way. And we do sometimes send contracts. Actually, we usually send contracts as PDFs. We do it on purpose because we don't want people changing our contracts. We would like them to sign the contract as it exists now.
Yes.
And most companies would agree that's what they want too. But that's not necessarily in your best interests, right? But right there, you can understand, like, someone who sent you a doc is saying, yeah, you know, if there's anything weird in here, we can work it out.
Yeah.
Someone who's sending you a PDF is saying, here's the contract, I would like you to sign it. Someone who sends you a HelloSign or a DocuSign is saying, fucking sign this contract.
Yep.
You know, and they've actually skipped a step, which is review.
Yes, which is the most important step of the entire contract.
Yes, because you don't, somebody hands you a contract, right? You don't just sign it, I hope. Don't just sign it.
Please don't.
Ever. What do? You read it.
Yeah.
You know, you read it yourself, see what it says. Now, if you understand everything in it and you're comfortable with everything in it, then cool.
Yep.
Feel free to sign it if it's what you want. But you read it. So by sending it as a HelloSign, they're saying we're at the last step. You should sign this right now.
Yep.
And some companies will do this, and we have to sort of politely remind them, hey, we haven't had a chance to review this yet.
Yeah.
Can you please send over a review copy? So you get the review copy, and you're like, oh my God, everything that we talked about is in there, but there's a lot of other shit in here that I don't understand.
Yep.
You know, there's things about liability and content ownership and image rights and, you know, confidentiality, indemnity, severability, like all of this stuff. Termination clauses, penalty clauses. You know, contracts can be, you know, well, they can be infinitely long, but, you know, we have seen contracts that are like 40, 50, 60 pages long sometimes. And that's horrible. Like, you know, a lot of times what we're working on, like the kind of things that broadcasters are doing, a contract should be maybe 2 pages, sometimes 3.
Yeah.
So when you get anything that long, you're just like, oh my God. But if you've never reviewed a contract, all of those things I just said can be pretty scary, because they're all full of really scary sounding words that you may or may not know the definitions of. And so the first thing you need to do is look the words up on the internet.
Yep.
You know, I mean,
Google is your friend.
Yeah. Oh, that is very small.
Lucky Misfit says evil contracts.
Yes, evil contracts.
Well, most are not evil. Some stuff in them can sometimes be construed as evil, but most of the people behind them are just trying to get a good deal done. And that's the whole point of the review phase, going back and forth to make sure that you guys have something that works on both ends.
Yep, and you have to remember that sometimes things that are in the contract that are not good are not intentionally not good.
Yes.
Or
exactly.
they came from, I feel like we answered that question already, Oliver. Yeah.
Oh, that's an old one.
Yeah. We will fix it.
Same guy.
We will fix it. But yeah, so I forgot what I'm saying. Sorry, Co is messaging me, and I'm just like, what is he saying?
Oh.
Talking about
stuff that is not
I got
intentionally.
it. Yeah. So when you have to remember, and this is something that comes up all the time. You may be negotiating, like talking to somebody that you know or you've met, you know, somebody that may even be a friend of yours. But when you move to contract phase, unless that person is the head lawyer at the company, which is almost never the case, now somebody else is involved in this, which is their lawyer. And their lawyer doesn't know you and has no interest in your, you know, well-being or you necessarily getting what you want. The lawyer is paid by that company to protect that company, to get that company what they want, and to make sure that in any situation where any of this stuff goes sideways, that the company can just wreck you. So sometimes a lawyer will put all kinds of horrible stuff in these contracts, and if you don't pay attention to that, then you'll sign it and you'll be in a massively bad position should something happen. You have to watch out for this dynamic because it sucks that you have your friend or somebody you know or somebody you trust has sent you the contract and you trust them. But you have to remember that that person is just one person at this company and they have very little say in what goes into that contract. So make sure that you understand that that person's not going to be able to protect you either if this goes badly. If you sign a contract that says if they don't like, we've seen contracts that say this, if they don't like what you say on the show, they don't like your tone, they can just not pay you. Okay? Literally have seen that dozens of times. And what that means is, so if I'm that company and I just decide that guy, I don't know, he was just a little sarcastic one time, when he said, oh, that was a good feature. I didn't like that. We're not paying him.
Yeah.
Right? They're completely within their rights to do that by that term that I just described. Now, now your friend comes to you and he's in an awkward position because he's the one who has to tell you, hey, we're not paying you for this thing. And I guarantee you that at that point, when you get upset and you're like, what? You got to help me. He's going to be like, buddy, I already did. Do you think I would be talking to you now? You think I agree? I don't, but I'm not in charge of this. You signed this contract and that's what the contract says. And, my boss, I'm pissed at my boss, but he says he's not paying you. And, the contract rules, not your friend. So that's why it's really important. Once you start doing business, you have to pull away from the personal relationships. We do business with people that I like, that I trust, that I've known for years. Mm-hmm. I still read that contract as if it's from frickin' Satan himself because it might be,
Yeah.
It's not necessarily your friend doing you a favor. So just always be careful and always treat this seriously. All right, we've got Dominator's more recent question. What would be the best way to understand the legalese of a contract with no background in contracts? If a sponsor vendor you have a contract with breaks the contract, okay, there's 3 questions. So let's just do the first one first. What's the best way to understand the legalese of a contract with no background in contracts? Well, getting a background in contracts is what's going to help you. And I know that's a crappy answer, but that's what I did. That's what, we all have done. Joe started this company. I doubt he'd reviewed too many contracts, but
no, not a whole lot.
Probably reviewed a lot now.
Yeah.
And now, once you start doing it, once you start reading more and more contracts, you start to see the same terms over and over. You start to know which ones are scary and which ones aren't. But what I would do if you have no background is for each little section, grab a sentence that feels like a fully formed thought and then just put it in quotes and paste it into Google. See if it comes up. Because if it's standard legal language, it'll be on some, website for, law students. It's how to write an indemnity clause, because most likely the lawyers just stole it from, some other contract from, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right?
Exactly.
Having this easy language is just good for everybody.
Yep.
So a lot of times standard stuff will be very easy to find on the internet, and it's kind of I don't know. I do this when I'm cooking, right? It's I'm gonna make this dish. It's oh no, I'm missing one of the ingredients. So I'll look at 3 or 4 recipes for the same thing, and I'll be well, it looks like I can fudge it with whatever, right? So Google a few different versions of that clause. You'll find it. You read a few of them, and it's kind of cheating your way up to understanding it.
Yeah.
But again, if you do that and you still don't feel confident that you understand it, you do need to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
Because that's you don't want to make a mistake here, especially if it has anything to do with your rights, with ownership, with releasing liability, any of that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into contracts that you don't want to agree to if you don't understand.
Yes.
Because you can put frickin' anything in one of these contracts. It's unreal.
Yeah.
I could just put in one of these contracts that I own your channel. If you sign this, I own your channel, you have to turn over your password, all of that stuff. If you sign it, I do own your channel. There's nothing, about that's not fair or that's bullshit or whatever. That's the agreement.
Here's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
There's your name on it.
If you go sue me in court, I just go in there and I'm Judge, he signed the contract.
Yeah.
It just says I own his channel. And that's pretty much all it says. And he signed it.
Yeah.
The judge goes, well, why did you sign it? It's I didn't know what I was doing. So you're an idiot. Cool. Well, get another channel, I guess, because you just lost that one.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why it's really important. If you don't feel comfortable with it, ask people.
Yes.
Ask your friends, you know, find a smart uncle or aunt or whoever. Do as much as you can there, because if you don't and you sign it, you're on the hook for it. So, you know, you better understand what you're agreeing to.
Yeah.
Again, talk to a lawyer. Like for these kinds of contracts, almost any contract I've seen here, it would take a lawyer probably 15 minutes, 30 minutes, look through it. Almost every time, you know, it's a 5-minute conversation of them saying, well, there's this thing, everything else looks standard. Yeah. So, you know, a local lawyer, you know, you don't need a fancy entertainment industry lawyer for most of these things. Yeah. Local lawyer is going to be like $100 an hour, $200 an hour maximum. So, you know, if you're that concerned, invest in that early. And over time, as you get more familiar, you won't need to use it as much.
Yes.
Second question. If a sponsor or vendor you had a contract with breaks the contract, how would you go about enforcing it? Well, that is a great question, and it does happen.
Yes.
You know, there's a concept in contracts called breach. You know, you breach a contract, and that means that you're in violation. You know, and this can be for any number of things. You know, that's why, again, you have to read the contract and understand your obligations.
Yes.
You know, one of the usual ones is confidentiality. So anything that they've told you that, you know, it's like, hey, this game is coming out, or, you know, we're going to launch an expansion, or whatever, you know, the sky is going to be blue in our game. If they've told you that and it's not public information, it's usually guarded by a confidentiality agreement. Yeah. So, you know, you go on the show and you're like, well, so they told me that the sky is blue in this game. It's amazing, right? You've breached your agreement. So at that point, sometimes in the contract, there are direct remedies. So it'll tell you what you can do. Sometimes it won't. It's usually better if it doesn't. Yeah. Because remember, contracts tend to benefit the person who wrote them.
Yes.
And most of the time, that's not going to be you. So when somebody writes like the remedies and the, you know, clauses and what's going to happen,
it's going to be a whole bunch of horrible stuff that you do not want to do.
Yeah, it's all going to be bad for you. You know, and you go back and say, well, I think that if, you know, your company violates this, I should get to punch you in the dick. Like, they're going to go, no, like, we're not putting that in. Like, you know, and you only get so much sort of negotiating power in one of these deals before, you know, everybody feels like their time is being wasted. Mm-hmm. So like that's one of the things you're really not going to spend a lot of time on. So whatever's in the contract is going to be what happens, and sometimes that can be really bad. Like we've seen fines in contracts, thousands of dollars. Yeah. You know, or you know, a typical thing is a very typical one is if you say anything racist, sexist, super disparaging, super awful, you know, or you commit a like felony or, you know, a major crime or something. Then you could be considered in breach of the contract. It's usually called a morals clause. Mm-hmm. You know, you hit a baby on purpose, like they can cancel your contract. Yeah. Like, you know, and I mean, you can kind of understand why. But so when a company doesn't pay, like that's the most typical one. They don't pay you. The first things you do are you start telling them that. You know, send an email to your contact there. It's like, hey, I haven't gotten paid yet. What's up? Make sure you get contact information for their accounts payable department as part of this. They should have asked you probably for a W-9 already. Mm-hmm. You know, they should be telling you where the invoices go, things like that. So you should now have more than one contact at the company. Start emailing them. You know, that's your money. And, you know, it happens all the time, man. Yes. Even good companies in the game industry will almost routinely be late. Like, you know, not because they're assholes. It's just like a thing about the game industry that's kind of weird. It's like everyone's just like a little late. No one seems to care. And it annoys the crap out of our accounting department. But it's just sort of the reality. So when you're looking at that, you know, you have to understand, there's always going to be a little of that. But if you're reaching out, like it's been, you know, you're supposed to get paid 30 days after you complete the thing, and then it's been 45 days, you know, you send an email, you're like, hey guys, like, this is my second email. I sent you one 31 days after, and I'm sending you one again, and I didn't hear back last time. Now you don't hear back again. Yeah. Now it's time to start getting concerned. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like, they'll write you back, they'll be like, yeah, you know, our accountant is on vacation, or, you know, this fell in a hole, or, you know, we're just idiots, you know, whatever it is. Like, you honest mistakes happen. But when they're not going to pay, they typically stop responding. Now, at that point, you have a couple options, and none of them are super great.
Yeah.
Depending on the amount of money it is, you can sue them. Usually sue them in small claims court because, I don't know. I think the limits are different from state to state. But you also have to look at your contract because the contract will always have a section in it that says, should this be, should there be a lawsuit, then the lawsuit will take place in this place. It's usually wherever the company is. Like ours always say, this contract will be governed by the laws of the state of California because that's where we are. And so if you want to sue us, we don't want to have to fly somewhere. Like,
don't want to fly to
here,
Warsaw for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just generally true of companies. Like they're going to have to be, there's going to have to be a lawsuit somewhere. Might as well be wherever I am. Again, when you write the contract, you write it to favor you, not the other person. So, getting that venue changed is not something you're going to want to negotiate about.
Yeah.
So you can sue them in small claims court. You can file complaints. You can publicly tweet about it. But really the only way you're guaranteed or mostly guaranteed to get your money back is to actually sue them. We find that in general, people will pay after some period of just being harassed constantly.
Yeah.
Sometimes like we've had situations where a company didn't pay, and then they got acquired by another company we did business with, and then we saw the announcement and send the message to our friend at the new company. He's like, hey, you just bought these guys, now you owe us money. And they're like, what? And they'll just take care of it, right? Sometimes that takes a while.
Yeah.
Sometimes like a person needs to like leave a job. Sometimes there's like a good reason for it. It's not your problem, right? It's like, well, the company didn't make any money, so we don't have money to pay anybody, so we just stop paying people, right? Like that's not a good reason, but at least it's understandable.
Yeah.
And then sometimes those companies, if you're following up with them, they'll pay you when they can.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pain in the ass, which is why it's important to make sure you know who you're dealing with. Like, ask other streamers, ask your friends, ask us. Feel free to just send us an email or DM me or send us a tweet. Hey, have you worked with this company before? We'll always let you know if we know something about them. Just like, we've done a bunch of deals with those guys. They're good. They're good dudes. Before it falls off, Xanatax asks, do you charge interest on late payments? We don't, just because no, if they're already paying late, they're not going to want to pay it. And it's the sort of thing where it's like, if everybody's going to be a little late and you're charging late payments, then it turns the process of collecting your money into
just gets even more complicated.
Yeah. And it creates a negative sentiment, right?
Yeah.
And we just don't want to be fighting with people about every little thing. So yeah, it would probably be better to do that. And yes, if we had a problem with a company where they were constantly late and it was frustrating, we would probably start to put penalty clauses in there. It's 30 days late, you owe us this. 40 days late, you owe us this. And then, okay, last question in there was, oh no, do lawyers need something? Do lawyers need to be involved? In small claims court, no, not necessarily. You can have a lawyer, but usually the judge is just there to sort of be both sides' lawyers too.
Yeah.
And those cases they're usually cut and dried, right? Like you go in, you say, yeah, I did this thing. Here's the contract. They owe me $500. The other guy goes, yeah, we don't want to pay him because he sucks. And the judge looks at both people's like, okay, but did you sign this? Did he do the thing? Okay, give him his money, man. It's $500. Get out of here. Small claims court is not, the big trials you see on TV or anything. It's pretty adorable. So that doesn't end up being too painful, and but we certainly have deals that we've signed that are large enough that if somebody screwed us over on them, we would have to sue. We would have to get the lawyers out. Have we ever had to sue anyone? No, we haven't. We have gone down the path where if companies were not amicable and didn't listen to reason, that it would have led to lawsuits. But luckily, we have a really scary lawyer, and people tend to do the right thing. You know, we're also not asking people for things that we don't, need. So usually, people pay us the money, or they, release the contract term, or whatever it is that needs to get done. But yeah, thankfully we have not had any lawsuits or anything, and we've also never been sued, which I'm happy about.
Let's keep the streak alive.
Yeah. What else we got here? Yeah, contracts. So we're gonna toss up some language from various contracts. They're in like shuffle mode, so I don't know what's gonna come up, and we'll just chat about it a bit. We are so ready.
Contract roulette.
No, I see nothing. I just see Joe. I see nothing. Wait, it's on. Oh no, but it's on Joe's screen.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just not showing up on our monitor. All right, we got it. So you guys see this one, right? Confidentiality and publicity. What does that say?
It says content provider will not issue any public announcements or announcements relating in any way whatsoever to this agreement or to the relationship established by it without the express prior written consent of company. The terms of this agreement, including the fees, is considered confidential information. Company may disclose to content provider additional information in the course of discussions regarding this agreement, all of which is confidential information. Content provider agrees to such information as confidential information under the agreement.
So there you go. That's what
fun.
Fucking lawyers talk like. All right. So this is an example of what we would consider a very restrictive confidentiality agreement.
Yes.
Every single contract you sign in this industry is going to have some form of confidentiality in it. A non-disclosure agreement or a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Mm-hmm. They're so important. A lot of times, companies will have you sign them before you even negotiate the actual contract. Because they want, like sometimes they're talking about a game that hasn't been released, or, some features or whatever. Like, at the very least, they're talking about business information, like how much they're going to pay you, how much, they're potentially going to spend, what their strategy is, stuff like that, and if you're talking to Activision, they don't want you to run over and tell EA all of their plans. Like, hey guys, guess what they're going to spend on Battlefield 5? Like, that's useful. So you'll always see some form of confidentiality. We'll show you ours that we put in our contracts typically right after this, and that's an example of a good confidentiality. This one is incredibly restrictive.
Yep.
If the way that it reads is very hostile, you will not issue any public announcement about anything at all whatsoever, or the relationship established without express written consent. Now that clause by itself can get you in trouble as a content creator, because
you have to disclose.
Yeah, you have to disclose your relationship to companies that are providing compensation of any sort. And that's even like a game key. Mm-hmm. So the way this thing reads right now, it says without their written consent, you can't talk about the fact that anything is going on, right?
Yeah.
So this is a confidentiality clause that is designed to hide a lot of stuff. And when we see something like this, we're immediately concerned, because we say, okay, well, if they're that serious about nobody talking about anything at all in any way forever, what are they hiding from us? And when you start thinking about that, like in some cases, there could be multiple companies involved. They could be hiding information from them, which is why they don't want you talking to anybody about anything. All sorts of different things could be happening that are weird. And so when you see something like this, you got to be really careful, because again, that first part could get you in trouble with the FTC. Yep. And in general, it's so restrictive that it creates some really awkward situations. And we would get a question like this, or a question about this from some people saying like, okay, well, the agreement is so confidential, I can't even talk about the agreement. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, how do I get help? Like, how do I talk to a lawyer? You can always talk to a lawyer about any document. Yeah. You can talk to your lawyer. You can talk to somebody who is your designated business advisor. Mm-hmm. That's all considered to be, just kosher. Like, people expect you to do that. If a company ever tells you that you can't show this to your lawyer, run.
Run away.
Run as fast as you can. if a company discourages you from talking to a lawyer, even in, saying like, oh, it's just a very easy contract, it's standard, don't worry about it. If they say things like that, that's a red flag to me, because that's like saying, it's like, it's like, I know you're going to a really, really violent place and gonna have a gunfight, but don't worry about bringing the bullets. Like, it'll be fine.
Leave your Kevlar at home.
Yeah. So always be cautious about things like that. Always be cautious about things that prevent you from talking at all about things. This to me looks like something that you would see, in like a Donald Trump Stormy Daniels in your NBA, right? Like something like that. So let's show you the good one.
Yeah. And to touch on Omeed's point there a little bit too, another example is if they, say, oh, this is really easy, no need for a lawyer to look at this. If you say, hey, I need to send this by my lawyer, and they say, oh, there's no time, we need to get this signed now, or else this isn't happening, same exact thing applies.
Yes. Pressure is one of the tactics that people will use to try to get you to make mistakes. Any form of pressure we consider to be a pretty dangerous sign, a sign that things may not be exactly what you're looking for here. So let's take a quick look at this better language. But I don't think we want to read all of that.
No, definitely don't want to read all.
Let's take a look. Any campaign information sponsor provides is strictly confidential. So you can see immediately how different it is than you can't talk about anything forever. Confidential information should not be released by the talent, Sure. Everybody involved is bound by these confidentiality terms. So if you are talking to your agents or whoever, they have to do this too.
Yeah.
Look at that. And no one will use this information, for evil. And then the second thing, this is all very, very standard language, and this is because you can't, it's designed to say you can't call something confidential information if I found out about it some other way. So like if, again, just a completely hypothetical thing, EA tells me that Battlefield 5 is going to have a new map in it that's on the moon, right? And that this is super confidential information. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I go to Kotaku and I read an article that says EA has next Battlefield map on the moon. Now, if I go tell people that, EA can't say I'm violating confidentiality because I did legitimately get it from somewhere else.
Yes.
And it's not, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like massively public, but if you're, people have told you that, like you hear it in the industry or things like that, then it can be considered public information at a point. If one person tells you, you don't just get to go blab, right? But once that stuff becomes public, it's not your fault. And that's kind of what the second part says. Or if you discovered it yourself, right? Like, I don't know exactly how that would work with the example that I gave, but, if you were able to find out that information, through a completely random method, then you're no longer bound by confidentiality. You may still kind of be a dick if you tell everybody, but that's kind of up to you. And like if somebody randomly tells you about it. Now, notwithstanding the foregoing, it's a nice, legal term that means, like keeping in mind all that, you can disclose confidential information in response to a valid court order. This is, again, very standard language. If, the FBI shows up and says, hey, we're investigating Electronic Arts for, violations of the RICO Act, and we have a subpoena to take your computer because you have emails and confidential documents from them, you have to give it to the FBI, right? And
if they find out they have a moon map coming out, then
Yeah, and then the freaking FBI is like playing the moon map before anyone, and that was the whole reason for this. But yeah, so in those cases, right, like, and this is a bunch of, it's just like kind of cover your ass language. Just make sure, and it really just says like, just fucking be cool, man. Like, don't tell anyone. But again, you look at that first one that is like almost threatening you through the words, and the difference between that and this, and think about how you feel when you read it. If you feel that they're sort of coming after you, or that it,
Yes.
you have something to hide, or they have something to hide, like it becomes a problem. What else we got?
Let's see. How about this? Sorry, you guys can't see it, but they can.
Oh, well, Joe's got it.
Oh,
got the
here we go.
broadcast, so it'll take a second. There we go.
Perfect.
Content ownership liabilities. So what we're talking about here is who owns your content. And this is a really important thing that people aren't thinking about as much as they should. You create this, like we're creating this broadcast right now. We're creating it on Twitch. So Twitch is the platform. It's like the television station where the show happens. The television station doesn't own the show. We own the show. We own this video. We own the content. This is our content. Now, if you have an agreement with Twitch, it will have some pretty standard language about licensing that content, so so that they're allowed to show it on their platform, right? That is something you want, so you give them that license. You have to be really careful when you're looking at ownership clauses in these things, because we've seen all sorts of different ones. We've seen ownership clauses that just give ownership of like your whole channel to the company. A lot of times the clauses will give ownership of the video. So if you did a sponsored video on a game, they will own that video. And now you're in this weird position of they own this video, but it's on my channel. I have all the control of it. But what does it mean that they own it? Like if I want to delete it, do I have to ask them? Like, there's all this mess. So there's two ways that you can look at ownership. And so if you read the second sentence in here, again, which is pretty legal, says, again, notwithstanding the foregoing, so, never mind all that, talent grants to its sponsors to sponsor its affiliates, licensees. Talent grants to the sponsor and like everybody else that they, their uncles and shit. And assigns the limited, which is the opposite of unlimited, non-exclusive, non-sub-licensable right. So it's a limited right. It is non-exclusive, which means that the talent can give it to more people. It is non-sub-licensable.
So they can't just go sell it to other people.
So they can't get it and then just make money selling it. Right to utilize portions of the content in connection with the campaign in all media, and this is the kind of fun shit that I love in contracts, known or hereafter devised via distribution method or means of transmission or viewing device worldwide in perpetuity. In context, so anyway, right? Like what you're trying to do here, and in perpetuity throughout the universe is like the most ridiculous version of this phrase that cracks me up. But you want to retain ownership of your content. Like this is our show. This company wants to pay us to promote a product or something on it. Now they need some amount of rights to this, to be able to use it effectively. But you don't want to give ownership away. So there are two ways to look at it. You keep ownership. That's what you're always trying to do. Just because it gets confusing any other way. You want to give them a license to do the things they need to do with your content. Now you have to think about what do they need to do. And then you want to give them the maximum amount of rights to do that without giving away stuff that you don't want to give. Because an easy way for them to get the rights they need is to say, you grant them rights to all of your content, your likeness, your logo, and everything in perpetuity throughout the universe, right? But right there, you just gave them access to all your content, everything you ever do or did or will do, any photo you take, any logo you have, anything forever. And they can just do whatever with it that is in the contract, right? Like in this one, it would be distribution or means of transmission, viewing devices, in-context advertising, publicity, promotion in all media.
Yeah.
And see, we also always put in with the talent's approval.
Yes.
Now, this is a hard one to get, but when you can do it, it means that they can't do any of those things without showing it to you first. And companies will ask this from you. Like if you do a YouTube video or something, they want to see it before you post it, right? They want to approve it. And if they don't like what they see, they may ask you to change some of it. They have what's called approval rights, you know, and depending on how you define that in the contract, you could have to change your your content like 20 times because they don't like it. You know, you have to define that box. But at some point, you know, they approve it and you can post it and then you can get paid. Sometimes they don't have that right. You just do your thing and you post it and you get paid. You know, it's live content, so there's not nearly as many approval rights for Twitch as there are for YouTube.
Yeah.
But so this is us taking something that the companies will always do to you and doing it to them. Because really, I don't want to see, you know, a picture of Carnage like saying, I'm so stupid at this game, you know, you could be better than me. You know, like that makes look, well, like an idiot. Yeah. And that's not how would like, you know, himself to be represented, and it's not how he wants his brand to be. You know, just like you ever notice like when you see a commercial with like Johnny Depp, he always looks like pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason for that, and the reason is because in his contract he gets to approve the final image. And I know this because I've signed a contract with them. He gets to approve the image rights.
Yeah.
So he looks at that ad and say, or you know, his people do say, yeah, he looks cool. Or it's like, you didn't make him look cool enough. You know, get a better picture where he looks cooler.
Like, oh, his eyes are closed in that one.
Yeah, like whatever it is, right? Like when you have the approval rights, then you have control. So we always try to make sure our clients have as much control as possible.
Yeah.
You know, and in this case, right, we say not to be unreasonably withheld, which means we're not going to be dicks.
Yeah.
Like we just want to see it to make sure, you know, you didn't put like a spoon in his butt or something. I don't know. So then what else we got here? Yeah, we'll coordinate and secure that. And, you know, the talent agrees, the sponsor doesn't have to do any of this. Like, it's up to them.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, all materials produced by the talent are owned by the talent, and they have the rights to use all of that as the final product. So that kind of language is very strong and protective of our clients. Now, again, we wrote this contract, so we wrote it the way we want it. You know, sometimes we'll have to negotiate with companies and they don't want some of this, and, you know, with the client's approval, it'll get taken out. But when they write the contract, I guarantee you they're not putting that stuff in there.
Yeah.
You know, they'll put in that they own it. They'll put in that, you know, it's a work made for hire, which is a pretty common term in contracting, but a very unusual term for this kind of content. But that means that you were hired to make the work for the company, so the company owns the work.
Yes.
But that's not at all what's going on there. So I think that's it for that one.
Yep.
Always make sure that you're retaining every single right that you can, that, you know, and only giving them what they actually need to do what they need with it. It's like, think about it this way. If you've signed a contract with somebody and you've given them the rights to your image, the rights to all, you know, all this stuff forever in any, you know, format that they decide. One day, maybe they decide, you know, let's just say it's a video game company. So they wanted to put your logo into, you know, their new video game. So that's what you're trying to do. But they got the rights to put your logo, your likeness, everything in anything forever. 5 years from now, maybe you're no longer a live streamer, you're a famous actor. You're like Brad Pitt, you know, and they have these rights, and they don't have to pay you anything else for them. And then they just make, you know, the Brad Pitt, you know, survival game or whatever. And, you know, it's just Brad Pitt, you know, it's just you running around doing all this stuff that you never agreed to. You know, they keep dressing you up in weird clothes and, you know, firing you out of a cannon while you make weird chicken noises.
I'd play that game, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, me too. But you will never be compensated for it. You know, you can sue them, and maybe there's a small chance a judge will take pity on you and say, yeah, okay, these guys made just a ridiculous amount of money on you, and that contract was, you know, exploitative.
Yeah.
But that whole process is going to cost you millions of dollars in years. If you just didn't sign that thing in the first place, It never would have happened.
Yeah.
So always make sure that you're giving people just the rights they need. Make sure the rights expire when the campaign is over.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
A reasonable amount of time afterwards.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Just.
Yeah, or like with with a company that makes a physical product, they'll need an exception for, like Bajira is on the Corsair boxes.
Yep.
So those boxes are, maybe around forever. Like there may just be, 20 years from now in some store, like 5 Bajira mice that just have never sold for whatever reason.
Yep.
Like 20 years from now, Bajira can't sue them and be like, you're still selling my mice, you still owe me money, right? So because the contract is stipulated as such that's like all that product has an exception. That's totally fair. That's not abusive. It would be way different if 20 years from now they just put out another set of mice and Bajira's all over it and they're like, yeah, it's a new product. It's like, but you're not paying me for this anymore. Do we have another one of these?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Dream Daddy Brad Pitt edition. I think there are a lot of people who would play that. Oh man.
Let's see what this one is.
It's like part 2 to the last one.
Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
this is a good example of like this is from a company to us. So this is how they write their rights for pretty much the same things we were talking about. It acknowledges the company shall be permitted to display, reproduce, affix the marks as set out in Schedule 3, which is going to be like some addendum at the super end of this thing that has, the literal pictures they're talking about. This is really important too, because again, you can limit it down. If they say, hey, we need to use your logo because we're going to put your logo, on the game, then you say, cool. Well, we'll give you the rights for the logo. The logo is in Schedule 3, and that's the one you get, because that's all they need. But yeah, logos, trademarks, images, photographs, information, other materials belonging to the content provider. That, again, collectively materials, which means that it's referenced somewhere else as materials.
Yeah.
Put it on products, packaging, advertisements, whatever. It's pretty straightforward, right? Like there's a lot of shit. It's here. There's a list of it here, and we need these rights. Okay, cool. And accordingly, the content provider grants the company a non-exclusive, royalty-free worldwide license. Again, non-exclusive means other people can get it. Royalty-free means you're not getting any money. Worldwide means across the world. To publicly display, transmit, distribute, all that stuff. And then upon the end of the term, the license will terminate, provided the materials that have been affixed during the term. This is almost exactly, I know this isn't from a Corsair contract, but it is almost exactly what I was just talking about. Yeah, so they're no longer allowed to do it after the contract expires, but all the stuff that happened during the term still counts. Again, very straightforward, very fair, very easy to understand, I think.
Yeah, and a quick example of one of those that happened is a lot of our clients just did a recent campaign with a game where they did a marathon stream, and their images, their likenesses were used on a banner that promoted that marathon stream with the times that they would broadcast, et cetera, et cetera. And that's fantastic to have for while the campaign is going on. But once that campaign ends, you don't want them to own your likeness, your image, to be able to use in promotional activities that you may not be a part of a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road.
Totally. Do we have any more? Like, those things where people are worried now that like dead celebrities are going to be turned into holograms and then forced to do concerts.
Yeah.
It's like that, right? Like there's a company that owns the image rights to Michael Jackson and has enough images to create these holograms, and now they can sell, his creepy holograms to do concerts.
You do this.
And I guess that's fine, but make sure that you're getting paid for it.
Yes.
And a lot of times these deals sort of are removing your rights to get paid for it. Indemnity and liability, these are two scary words. Indemnity is about, blame. And so if you're indemnifying someone, you are removing them from blame. So you're basically saying, cool, whatever happens, you're not at fault, don't worry about it. Now, we've seen some indemnity. You will almost always see indemnification clauses. Sometimes they'll go both ways, where the company won't harm you for things that you do to the company, and vice versa.
Yep.
Sometimes they will be completely one way, where you will, like, they can totally screw you and you can't ever sue them. As you can see, this one then goes on to talk about liability. This is like, look, if we screw you, which maybe we will, because you got to worry about it, right? They wrote it down. So they're thinking that they may screw you. There's a chance. The company's aggregate liability for all incidents of claim under this agreement shall not exceed 1/2 of any or all sums paid by company pursuant to this agreement. Which means they hit you with a car, they owe you half of the sponsorship fee.
They pay you $200. Hit you with a car, you get paid $100.
Yep. And again, like, look at 2.3 here. Company is not liable for any indirect or consequential losses, costs, or expenses, any loss of profits or goodwill, or any manner beyond its reasonable control. So again, like, this is more cover your ass language, and you'll see this kind of thing in pretty much every contract. But part of it is to protect the company against, let's just say, that it's Disney, right? And Disney has this like super wholesome image and things like that. And they bring you on and you're now the host of whatever American Idol Disney version. And then after the show has become the biggest show on television, they find out that you're a white supremacist and you actually run like a KKK meeting and you lynched somebody. Okay? So it's like pretty bad. You're an awful person. And it just all comes out at once. And this is now going to cost Disney millions of dollars. Your career is going to be destroyed. All of this stuff. Well, if Disney, was the one who like put that information out, or Disney fires you from like the best thing that ever happened, you can't really sue them. No. Like, that's what these sort of liability clauses are about. If it turns out you're a horrible person, like, or they accidentally destroy your shit in the process of working together, you can't really sue them. And there's going to be a lot of clauses in these contracts about like not suing them because they don't want to get sued. So in general, you just sort of have to deal with it. Most of the time, at the level of contracts that you're talking about, it's not enough money to care. Like if it's $1,000 and all this horrible stuff happens, you probably got bigger problems than the fact that you're not getting your $1,000.
Yes.
If it was a $10 million contract, right, like there would be a lot more negotiation about stuff like this. But, in contracts that are small, it's like just a lot of times not worth it. But again, you'll see stuff like this in most contracts. Make sure it doesn't say anything, about like they get to take your car. One word to watch out for is injunction. Injunctions mean that you can actually stop the person from doing something. So like a company can sue for an injunction against you, and it's like a restraining order against you doing your job.
Yes.
So like if you're a streamer and someone, sued for an injunction, they would be suing to stop you streaming. So imagine that, you were not supposed to disparage the company. And so every day you go on and you're violating your non-disclosure agreement. You're telling them, you're telling your audience all the secret stuff about the Call of Duty moon base now, the moon base in the game, and don't worry, EA sucks and I hate them. All this stuff you're doing, it all violates your contracts. At some point, if they have the ability to file for an injunction, they'll usually ask for it in the contracts. They can go to court and they can tell the judge, look, what this guy is doing is damaging our overall business. He's telling people about our new content. This is costing us money. He has to stop. And a lot of times the judge will say yes. And then you will be banned from streaming or tweeting or doing your work until that situation is resolved.
Which is not going to be quick.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have income to pay your lawyers.
Yes. And it is often a tactic that is used to file an injunction that prevents you from making revenue, and then drag the thing on until you can no longer afford a lawyer. Because if you're fighting with a big company, they can do the lawsuit forever.
Yes.
So a lot of scummy stuff can happen. The most important things about contracts are not getting to the point where you're going to court.
Yeah.
And you do that by working with good people, by checking people's references, by talking to your peers, by, making sure that if you get a contract and it feels weird or, you're not sure, that you don't take it. Like, all of those things will help, because once you get, for the amounts of money we're talking about and the amounts of, disproportion between like your size and income versus the companies you're probably dealing with, you're just not going to be in a real good place if you have to go to court most of the time.
Yeah.
Like right now, there's a streamer suing Twitch for banning his channel wrongfully, and and Twitch is also suing him because they say that they didn't.
Yep.
And a big part of that strategy is probably, look, we're Amazon, we have all the lawyers in the world, like we can fight with you forever. Like, let's do it, and they can win on that.
They literally sell the law books.
Yep.
What are you going to do, man?
Delete them all out of his account. Do we have any more of those examples, Jamar? I think we might be.
Let me put one up and let me see what you think. We can go from there. I don't know if we've done this one yet.
We have not.
Once,
But it is small. Okay. Let's see. All right. So this is a pretty standard clause. You'll see these in contracts. They will be pretty different from each other, but it's common to see something like it.
Yeah.
This clause is basically saying, this is how we would prefer the stream to go. This is what the experience should look like. If the product's a game and you shall be playing it, then they want you to have played it for 15 minutes beforehand. So like, this is because sometimes you'll see somebody do a sponsored stream and they're like, oh well, I better install this game, and it's like, okay, well, I'm paying for this. Like, I'm not paying for you to install the game. I was paying for you to play the game, right? So this is like a precaution against that, which is totally understandable because that's not playing the game.
Yeah.
And then see, it even explains why, for a fluid gaming experience for viewers.
Yeah.
If it's a mobile game, it should be played. Wait, shall play the product on a PC and not a phone. Oh, that's weird. So they're asking for you to use an emulator.
Yeah, there's some parts that may try and direct your content, and you can even look at the playing a game 15 minutes prior as somewhat directing the content. That's something that we in a contract probably wouldn't push back too hard on, because it's something that is pretty fair to ask, right? Like, hopefully if you're taking on sponsorship for a game that you've never played before, assuming it's not like a AAA title that nobody has played before and you'll be playing it right on launch, you probably will have wanted to try the game out beforehand for 15 minutes to make sure that it's something that you could play for 2 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah.
However, sometimes companies can ask for you to play a game a really specific way, and that can be either on the hardware side, or it can be literally telling you exactly what to do in the game and directing your content that way, which is something that we do tend to push back on.
Yeah, and it comes down to personal preference.
Yeah.
The reason we usually push back on it is because we want to make sure that our clients get to do what they want.
Exactly.
And they may want to do it this way, they may not. We could also just ask them. It's like, hey, so they said you should use an emulator. Are you cool with that? And if they're like, yeah, I don't care. If it works, works.
Yeah.
So as long, this is why it's important to read this stuff, because nothing in here is necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
However, everything in here could just ruin your day if you weren't expecting it, or it's, maybe you didn't want to play on an emulator, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't like emulators, but you signed a contract that says you have to do it. Now you have to do it.
Exactly.
So you just have to make sure you read and understand what's going on.
Precisely.
What else we got, Jamar? This is kind of fun.
That might be it.
That might be it.
I have a question on Twitter, but it's kind of like a follow-up to something you said on Twitter.
That's fine.
Can I put up what you said so you're aware.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
What did I say that was so bad?
I'll make this-
Hey, Mr. Dave, how you doing? All right. Okay. So this is a tweet from earlier. Oliver was saying that there's a question about this tweet. So I was saying if you have a signed contract with someone and they ask you to do extra work, or if they ask you to reduce their obligations,
Yep.
that's your choice. They have to honor the terms that you agreed on. That's what's in the contract, just like you do. You know, and so think about how you would feel, or how they would feel if you asked them to, you know, just pay you double,
Yeah.
right? They'd be like, fuck right off, right? And so the same thing is true. If they're asking you to do a bunch of extra work, and you know, you can just be fuck right off. Like you have a contract, and that's what it says.
Yeah.
Now, okay, well, so Sparrow McGee's question is, I figure if they're asking you for something, that might take away time from your original work if you decide to do it. Could you renegotiate for extra compensation? Yes, that's actually
Absolutely.
what I was going to say next. So the thing about contracts, it's really important to remember, these are pieces of paper that are sets of rules. They're not, you know, they're not meant to be like the Bible where you're like cutting people's heads off over stuff, you know, in them. Like, they're really just there. Like, I mean, I've been in lawsuits. Like, thankfully, I've not been sued myself, but I've had to testify in them. So I've had to deal with, you know, some very expensive lawyers and all kinds of stuff. And I've seen, you know, had to listen to judges talk about it. Very often, you know, the judge will say things like, guys, like, how did you not figure this out? Like, you both, there's this thing in this contract, and you're both so pissed about it, but it's like what this guy was giving you was not what's written, and what you were giving him was not what's written. Why didn't you have this conversation? Why are we here? You know? Like, the judge very often is just like trying to figure out, he's just trying to sort out a mess that you made,
Yep.
you know, because you can no longer agree on what the contract says. So the contract can be a very fluid document. Like, it can be changed, right? You can sign an amendment anytime. You know, I have a contract that says I own your Twitter channel or your Twitch channel, right? We could sign an amendment that says I also own your Twitter, like, and then it would just be part of the same contract. So the same thing, if you know, you have a sponsorship going, and then the company says, you know, those tweets you're doing are really good. I know you're only doing one a month. Could you do 4 a month? You know, you say, yeah, sure, that wouldn't be a problem, but I should be compensated extra for those. And then, you know, you need to have a figure in mind of what you should be compensated. You say, like, yeah, you know, so that should be another $200 a month or whatever you think it is. And again, you have a little negotiation to sort out what's fair and what's right. And then you sign usually an amendment to the contract. So they'll just tack another page on, basically, that's like, everything in the contract up till here is still agreed. However, we want 3 extra tweets a month. So, you know, when somebody's telling you that they want to change something, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a point of negotiation.
Yep.
And you have to understand, like, they're doing it for some reason. Like, maybe they're not having a good experience. Like, it's not working out. You're doing everything in the contract, but they don't feel like, you know, they're making money or selling enough of the product or whatever.
Yeah. So
So they're coming to you to try to fix that problem. Now, how you deal with that is going to determine, you know, what happens next. So, you know, it really, again, all this stuff comes down to interaction with human beings. It's just understanding that what's on the paper is a very, very, very final thing.
Yes.
So, you know, at any point, the human beings who are talking can stop being reasonable, and I can just say, that's what the contract says, you have to do it. Like, it's the contract. It doesn't mean you can't change it or renegotiate it, but you are playing from this set of rules already.
Yeah.
So you have to think through that. Do we have more questions? Anything like that? I don't think so. Good. Good, because I'm tired. It is hot in San Diego, man.
It has been cooking. Any last questions from chat?
What are you going to play this weekend, Joe? Anything?
What am I going to play this weekend? I'm going to go to LA and watch some Heroes of the Storm this weekend.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
We're playing basketball this week.
Oh, we are playing. Yeah, we're playing
Playing
basketball.
basketball this weekend.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Hey, Asian Sensation. How you doing?
Yeah,
Hey,
play
Grizzly
some.
Ben. Hey, Swolly Bible. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, and I'm going to play some We Happy Few, I think.
Oh yes,
I'm
that
pretty-
game looks awesome.
I'm pretty excited about it. I was watching a little bit of Co earlier.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, we'll be there, Grizzly Ben. definitely hope to say hi.
Yep.
So guys,
Absolutely.
yeah, we're gonna end it a couple minutes early. Go, drink probably.
Enjoy your Fridays, friends.
Yeah. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week for another episode of Office Hours. Take care, everybody.
Bye now.